Thank you for listening. This course was created to help you succeed in your educational journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional podcasts, books, newsletters, and cool merchandise await. Let's get started. Data poisoning can be defined as the deliberate corruption of training data to influence how artificial intelligence systems learn and behave. Unlike accidental noise or mislabeled entries that occur naturally, poisoning is an intentional act by an adversary designed to manipulate outcomes. Poisoning may be overt, where errors are obvious and disruptive, or subtle, where manipulations blend seamlessly into legitimate data. Both forms undermine trust in the integrity of the training process, because models internalize poisoned patterns as if they were genuine. The long-term impact can be significant. Once a model has been trained on corrupted data, harmful effects persist in its parameters and decision-making. This differs from inference-time attacks, which may be filtered or corrected. Poisoned training shapes the very foundation of the model. Understanding the meaning, methods, and implications of data poisoning is a critical step in building resilient AI security practices. Poisoning attacks can be grouped into distinct categories, each reflecting a different adversarial strategy. Label flipping attacks intentionally misassign labels, such as marking fraudulent transactions as legitimate, so the model learns the wrong associations. Backdoor triggers embed hidden patterns, like a specific pixel arrangement in images or a keyword in text, that activate malicious behaviors when encountered. Clean label manipulations are more deceptive. They preserve plausible labels but alter inputs in subtle ways that bias training toward an adversary's goal. Attacks can also be targeted, designed to cause specific misclassifications, or indiscriminate, aimed at degrading overall model performance. These categories illustrate the diversity of poisoning approaches and the challenge of defending against them. Because they exploit the flexibility of machine learning, even small, carefully crafted manipulations can distort the resulting model in ways that remain hidden until the attacker activates them. The goals of adversaries using data poisoning vary according to motivation and context. One objective may be to bias model predictions, such as nudging a spam filter to misclassify malicious emails as benign. Another goal is to insert hidden functionality by creating backdoors that can be triggered later with specific inputs. Adversaries may also aim to degrade accuracy more broadly, reducing trust in a competitor's product or undermining an organization's services. Misclassification is often the direct effect, whether targeted fooling a facial recognition system into approving one identity for another, or general, weakening the system's reliability across tasks. Each of these goals underscores why poisoning is so damaging. The attacker shapes the model's future performance without needing direct access after training. Their manipulations become part of the model's logic, difficult to detect and even harder to remove once embedded. The impact of data poisoning is most visible during the training phase, where corrupted inputs distort how models learn patterns. Poisoned examples can cause the system to embed adversarial correlations, associating outcomes with features that are irrelevant or misleading. This weakens generalization, meaning the model performs poorly on legitimate data it has never seen before. Poisoning also influences decision boundaries, the dividing lines models use to separate classes so that they favor adversarial outcomes. For example, flipping labels for only a few samples can warp these boundaries, causing a cascade of misclassifications. The compromised patterns become part of the model's architecture, stored in its parameters and hidden from immediate inspection. As a result, a poisoned model may appear to train normally and achieve high validation accuracy, masking the corruption until later exploitation. The consequences extend into inference, where the poisoned model interacts with real-world inputs. Backdoor triggers can remain dormant until a specific pattern is presented, at which point the model delivers an adversary's desired output. This enables targeted evasion, such as bypassing a malware detector with a specially crafted file. Sensitive outcomes, credit approvals, medical diagnoses, or legal judgments can also be manipulated if poisoning was designed to influence those domains. Beyond individual cases, poisoning undermines reliability. creating gaps where the model fails unpredictably. Because inference depends on the patterns learned during training, poisoned correlations resurface whenever inputs align with the adversary's manipulations. These risks highlight why poisoning is not only a training concern but also a deployment hazard, turning compromised learning into active exploitation at runtime. Data sources themselves are key points of vulnerability. Open datasets collected from the internet are especially at risk, since attackers can plant poisoned examples where they are likely to be scraped. Crowdsourced labeling platforms carry risks if malicious annotators deliberately mislabel entries. Internal data lakes, though seemingly controlled, may accumulate poisoned samples if access is poorly governed or if contributions come from untrusted insiders. Third-party datasets or vendor contributions create another exposure, as organizations often rely on external sources to supplement their training. Each source represents an entry point where poisoned data may slip in, often undetected. The diversity of sources mirrors the diversity of risks. Wherever data is gathered, labeled, or shared, adversaries have opportunities to seed manipulation. This broad attack surface underscores the importance of vigilance across every collection channel. Detection challenges make data poisoning especially formidable. Unlike obvious breaches, poisoned data is designed to blend in with legitimate examples, often hiding within the natural variability of large datasets. Adversaries exploit this by introducing poisoned records that look indistinguishable from clean ones, burying them in scale so defenders cannot manually inspect each entry. At internet or enterprise scale, datasets may contain billions of records, leaving organizations with little ground truth for comparison. Poisoned examples may represent a fraction of the whole, yet their influence can be disproportionately large. Because of this stealth, defenders often only discover poisoning after a model behaves oddly in production. By then, remediation is difficult, as the malicious influence is baked into the model's learned parameters. This invisibility makes detection one of the greatest obstacles to defending against poisoning. Statistical detection methods provide one approach to tackling the problem. Outlier analysis searches for anomalous data points that differ significantly from the majority, flagging them for review. Clustering can reveal groups of data that form unusual patterns, suggesting manipulation. Monitoring for distributional shifts changes in how data is distributed compared to historical norms can identify when new inputs deviate suspiciously from expectations. Anomaly scores automate these assessments, assigning numerical values to highlight potential risks. While these techniques can detect broad irregularities, they are less effective against carefully crafted attacks where poisoned data mimics the distribution of legitimate samples. Still, statistical methods are a useful first filter, narrowing massive datasets into subsets that warrant deeper investigation. Model-based detection methods take a different angle, using the model's own behavior to reveal poisoning. One strategy is retraining on subsets of the dataset to see if predictions change significantly when certain data points are excluded. Large shifts suggest those points have disproportionate influence. Prediction shift analysis measures whether removing specific examples alters outcomes in ways that imply adversarial intent. Influence function analysis formalizes this, calculating the contribution of individual samples to the model's predictions. Gradient inspection examines training updates, flagging unusual changes that hint at poisoned inputs. These techniques turn the model into a diagnostic tool, exposing corruption hidden in its parameters. While computationally demanding, they offer insights that statistical methods alone cannot achieve. Preventive data controls are essential to reduce the chances of poisoning entering the pipeline at all. Provenance checks confirm where data originated and whether it comes from trustworthy sources. Validation of external contributions ensures that third-party datasets meet quality and integrity standards before use. Labeling audits provide oversight for human annotators, catching inconsistencies or deliberate tampering. Reliance on trusted repositories, whether internally curated or vetted by reputable communities, further reduces exposure. These measures mirror the principle of supply chain security, Organizations must scrutinize the origins of their inputs just as carefully as they defend their outputs. Preventive controls may not catch every poisoned record, but they dramatically narrow the opportunities for adversaries to introduce them in the first place. Hardening training pipelines creates additional protection once data reaches technical systems. Data sanitization filters remove known malicious patterns before ingestion. Restricted ingestion channels prevent uncontrolled flows of external data from reaching training environments. Redundancy checks, such as comparing multiple datasets for consistency, make it harder for poisoned inputs to slip by unnoticed. Adversarial resilience testing goes further, deliberately injecting poisoned data into test runs to evaluate how well the system resists compromise. These pipeline safeguards operate like firewalls around training, ensuring that even if poisoned data attempts to enter, it encounters multiple layers of scrutiny and resistance. Pipeline hardening is thus a practical expression of defense in depth, tailored specifically for machine learning. Resilience after training acknowledges that no defense is perfect, and that poisoning may occasionally succeed. Organizations must therefore be prepared to mitigate compromised models. Retraining with clean data helps purge malicious influence, though it can be costly. Pruning neurons associated with backdoor behaviors reduces their ability to trigger, while defensive distillation retrains models in ways that smooth out adversarial patterns. Backdoor removal techniques, such as fine-tuning on carefully selected examples, offer targeted remediation. These strategies reflect the reality that remediation is more difficult than prevention, but still possible. By building resilience after training, organizations ensure they are not powerless once poisoning is discovered, preserving both operational trust and security. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. From a supply chain perspective, data poisoning extends beyond what an organization directly collects. Pre-trained models, widely shared in open repositories, may already contain poisoned patterns embedded during their initial training. When such models are fine-tuned for specific tasks, those hidden vulnerabilities carry over, giving adversaries indirect access to downstream systems. Transfer learning, while efficient, magnifies the problem. Poisoned features learned once can cascade into many applications. Open-source repositories are particularly exposed, since anyone can contribute data or models, creating opportunities for poisoning to spread broadly. Vendor contributions also require scrutiny, as even reputable providers may unknowingly pass along compromised assets. This supply chain angle highlights that poisoning is not always homegrown. It can be inherited silently, undermining trust in otherwise well-engineered systems. Evaluation metrics provide a way to assess how well defenses perform against poisoning. One measure is attack success rate. How often does an adversary achieve their goal under current defenses? Comparing clean accuracy against poisoned accuracy reveals whether the system maintains performance when compromised inputs are present. False positives must also be considered, since overly aggressive defenses that misclassify legitimate data as poisoned can degrade both efficiency and trust. Long-term model stability is another benchmark, indicating whether models retain resilience over time or deteriorate when retrained incrementally. These metrics shift poisoning defense from intuition to evidence, helping organizations balance robustness, usability, and resource investment in practical, measurable ways. Research continues to push towards stronger defenses. Certified robust training methods aim to provide mathematical guarantees that models resist specific classes of poisoning. Differential privacy, originally designed to protect individual records, overlaps by reducing the influence any single data point can exert, thereby blunting targeted manipulations. Data attribution tracing offers promise by linking model behaviors back to specific training examples, allowing defenders to identify and remove poisoned inputs more effectively. Adaptive defense frameworks take an evolutionary approach, updating protections dynamically as new attacks emerge. These innovations underscore the dynamic nature of poisoning defense. It is a contest between adversarial creativity and defensive resilience, requiring ongoing innovation to keep pace. The regulatory relevance of poisoning has grown as sectors recognize its potential impact on safety and trust. Data integrity laws demand organizations prove that training sets are accurate and protected from tampering. Critical industries like healthcare, finance, and transportation face heightened requirements to audit provenance and disclose risks tied to poison data. Compliance frameworks increasingly ask for documentation of how data is collected, verified, and secured. Disclosure obligations may compel organizations to report when poisoning compromises model integrity. These mandates are not only legal guardrails but also expressions of public accountability, reinforcing that poisoning is a societal risk, not just a technical one. Organizations that ignore this dimension risk not only fines but also erosion of credibility with regulators, customers, and the public. Operational monitoring ensures poisoning defense does not end at training. Continuous scanning of datasets as they grow helps identify anomalies before they contaminate models. Incremental retraining checks allow defenders to test for degradation as new data is introduced, catching poisoning early. Logging data source access provides visibility into who is touching critical assets, supporting investigations when anomalies occur. Automated thresholds can trigger alerts when data behaviors deviate significantly from norms. These monitoring practices transform poisoning defense from a one-time safeguard into a living process, one that evolves with both the system and the adversarial landscape. Without operational vigilance, even strong initial defenses may erode over time. The limits of mitigation must also be acknowledged honestly. Defenses against poisoning can be resource-intensive, demanding computational power and expert oversight that not all organizations can sustain. Attack sophistication evolves quickly, producing novel methods that bypass current tools. Detection coverage is never complete. Some poisoned examples will inevitably evade filters. Trade-offs between accuracy and defense are common, as aggressive filtering can degrade model performance. These limits do not imply hopelessness, but rather realism. Poisoning cannot be eliminated entirely, only managed. Success lies in layering defenses, maintaining vigilance, and setting realistic expectations. By acknowledging limits, organizations prepare themselves for resilience, focusing effort where it provides the greatest return. Integration with lifecycle security demonstrates how defenses against data poisoning must be woven into every stage of an AI system's development. At collection, provenance checks and validation ensure that data sources are legitimate before they ever enter storage. During storage, integrity measures such as hashing and versioning help detect tampering and preserve trustworthy baselines. In the training phase, adversarial resilience testing and restricted ingestion channels act as safeguards against poisoned inputs being incorporated into the model. Post-deployment, monitoring for backdoor activation or anomalous outputs ensures vigilance does not lapse. By embedding defenses across the lifecycle, organizations create a chain of protection, where each stage reinforces the next. This holistic approach mirrors the attacker's persistence, recognizing that poisoning opportunities exist everywhere data flows. The value of lifecycle integration lies in closing the gaps that fragmented defenses leave open. A team that focuses only on training time validation may still ingest poisoned data during collection. Another that concentrates on inference testing may miss manipulations embedded months earlier. Lifecycle alignment prevents this tunnel vision, distributing accountability across collection, storage, training, and deployment. Teams understand their roles and responsibilities, reducing the likelihood of blind spots. Security then becomes not a patchwork but an ongoing discipline, where protections form a continuum. This integration also enables clearer governance. Leadership can see how each stage contributes to resilience, strengthening trust in both process and outcomes. The nature of poisoning attacks underscores their unique severity. Unlike inference time exploits, which are limited to live interactions, poisoning contaminates the very foundation of learning. Categories such as label flipping, backdoors, and clean label manipulations show how attackers can shape outcomes either broadly or surgically. Their goals bias, hidden functionality, degraded accuracy, or misclassification demonstrate the versatility of the threat. Impacts ripple from training into inference, producing backdoor activations and targeted evasion in sensitive contexts. The long-term persistence of poisoned behaviors sets them apart. Once embedded, they are hard to detect and harder still to remove. Recognizing these attributes helps organizations grasp why poisoning deserves special emphasis within AI security. Defensive layers, though imperfect, form the practical answer to this challenge. Statistical detection methods provide early signals while model-based approaches expose subtler manipulations. Preventive controls, including provenance and labeling audits, minimize exposure at the source. Pipeline hardening, through restricted ingestion and resilience testing, reinforces defenses where data is transformed into learning. Post-training resilience measures, retraining, pruning, distillation provide recovery pathways when prevention fails. Supply chain scrutiny broadens the scope, ensuring inherited vulnerabilities do not undermine otherwise strong defenses. Each layer addresses a different weakness, and together they provide overlapping protection. Defense in depth, a familiar principle in cybersecurity, proves equally vital for resisting data poisoning. Evaluation, research, and regulation combine to keep these defenses evolving. Metrics such as attack success rate and long-term stability quantify resilience. Research into robust training, differential privacy, and attribution tracing pushes defenses forward, adapting to new attack sophistication. Regulation adds external accountability, requiring organizations to prove data integrity and disclose risks. Operational monitoring sustains vigilance over time, transforming defenses from static controls into living processes. Even as limits remain resource intensity, incomplete detection, trade-offs, these forces ensure that defenses do not stagnate. The combination of technical rigor, scientific innovation, and regulatory pressure drives progress, steadily raising the bar for adversaries. In conclusion, data poisoning attacks represent one of the most dangerous threats to AI security because they target the foundation of learning itself. By corrupting training data, adversaries embed long-lasting manipulations that affect both model behavior and trust in its outputs. We explored categories of poisoning, adversarial goals, impacts across training and inference, vulnerable data sources, and the challenges of detection. Defensive strategies, from preventative controls and pipeline hardening to post-training resilience, were shown as layers in a broader defense. The supply chain perspective, evaluation metrics, and regulatory obligations expand the response beyond technical fixes into organizational governance. Integrated with lifecycle security, these measures provide continuity of defense across all stages. With poisoning understood, the next step is to examine training time integrity more broadly, where data, processes, and infrastructure all converge to shape secure, reliable AI systems. Thanks for tuning in to Bare Metal Cyber, your trusted source for cybersecurity educational materials, news, and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.